And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Well, this video has went viral. I'm sure everyone has seen it, and we actually did a podcast about it. This is a cop that absolutely refused to do his job and refused to help his partner. Ultimately, here he has a firearm. He's just been stripped of his firearm, and he's now been placed on modified assignment. What is modified assignment? Basically just a change in status. He's still a full-duty cop without a firearm. He'll be doing administrative work. Is this the right response by the NYPD? John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, modified assignment. He continues to get all his pay. They take his badge and his gun, basically stripped him of his arrest authority and his police powers, and he's in an administrative assignment doing paperwork. Is this the proper response? I mean, I believe that there needs to be an investigation done, and I mean, it's clear that he's a danger to not only his partner but to the public. So it's possibly the right response, but why last November, when we saw a cop refuse to help a sergeant who was involved in a scuffle, why was that cop suspended? The same administration, same disciplinary process. Why does this cop still getting paid and being moved to a modified assignment when the other cop was suspended?
So clearly what this video displays here is that there's absolutely no standard anymore for the NYPD. There's no standard for the NYPD administration. There's no standard under the behest of Mayor Eric Adams. In some cases, when it comes to optics, we see someone get suspended. In some cases, we see someone get modified. But in this particular case, and this case went viral, and the reason why this case went viral is because it's so apparent, it's so obvious that you do not need to be a cop. You need absolutely no police experience to make a proper assessment here, to see that this is so egregious, that this is a complete dereliction of duty. And this cop should be suspended, investigated, and ultimately to be terminated. I find it hard-pressed to believe that there's a reason that he operated in this manner that would not seek termination.
Well, what do you think's going to happen? Because I personally think he's going to be modified for 30 days, and he's ultimately going to be rewarded. You know, there was a comment on YouTube yesterday, and somebody said, well, what's really going to happen? They said he should be fired, but what's really going to happen is he's going to end up in IAB, and in 18 months, he's going to get a detective shield. And honestly, I mean, I looked at it, I said, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. What do you think the NYPD is ultimately going to do? Do you think they're going to terminate him, Eric?
So glad you asked that, right? So you're asking, what is the NYPD going to do? What is their proper response? How should they respond? So I could say this. I know that this cop should be terminated in a normal world, but in the upside-down world of the NYPD, this cop will be rewarded. I do believe that this cop would be commended if this video did not go viral for showing restraint. You and I talked about this yesterday. We talk about good cop versus bad cop. And I think this is the new standard, and this is the new ideology of a good cop. I actually think that there is a good portion of people that would look at this video and say he's the good cop, and the cop grappling with the perpetrator is the bad cop. And it just shows the upside down world and the misdirection of perception that we have in this city and this entire country.
Perception versus reality. The perception is the NYPD is prepared. The reality of it is they're not. I mean, this cop right here, he's not prepared to handle a minor arrest situation in New York City. Is he going to be prepared to handle when the fight's really on, when there's a God forbid, a terrorist attack, a natural disaster, things that take place in New York City streets, things that happen. These aren't things that are unlikely in the realm. I mean, this is just a minor arrest situation that caused the crowd to form. And you see right here, there is a large crowd surrounding everybody. But the initial crowd right there is only 3 individuals, and he wasn't able to control 3 people on New York City streets. Very scary.
Well, I agree with you to a point, right? So based on this video, there's only 3 people on the onset of it. But what we don't see, and this is the beauty that people don't understand just by body camera and video surveillance, is we don't know what was happening across the street, what was happening above these police officers, right? Because they're in a metropolis, and I know this area in the Bronx, and worked in the Bronx, and there's definitely people hanging outside those windows looking. So, and of course, at some point, we do see the larger crowd encompass, and we can get a good visual of how dire this is. But let's just talk about dereliction of duty, right? Ultimately, you're a police officer, you're a public servant, you're supporting public safety. It's a heroic job, but exactly that. It is a job. If you were in private industry and you did not do your job, believe me, they would seek your termination immediately. So that's why I say, look at this video. Is this cop doing his job according to the police department and even the patrol guy that we have now, according to taking your oath? Is he actually doing his job? I think just looking at it, this is a complete epic failure, and the police department cannot deny that he's not doing his job.
He's absolutely not doing his job, and he's making the situation worse, right? He never even goes to engage until the other 2 officers come. I'm telling you, it's a terrible situation. And like I said, there is a large crowd on the street. There are people all around, but the people immediately in front of them, he can't even deal with. It's absolute egregious. It's more than just dereliction of duty. It's cowardice, in my opinion. It's cowardice, or it's nefarious, because he's taking the side of the people that his partner are trying to arrest. So what I'm saying here is, what is the difference between this incident and the person on the train that refused to help the lieutenant, and the lieutenant got his ass kicked? Why was that person suspended, and why wasn't he? And I'm gonna go out right now, and I'm gonna tell you why I think it is. And I think it's because he's black. That's my personal opinion.
I'm proud of you, brother, because I was going to say the same thing. You know what? This is so egregious. And like John said, because I was thinking the same thing, right? We look at this and we say, okay, there's a dereliction of duty. Absolutely, this is cowardice. But if we were to flip the coin and say, wait a minute, is this cowardice or is this nefarious? And that's a great point that you brought up, because I said to myself, I was watching his demeanor, and I remember saying this on the last podcast. He didn't appear afraid to me. And that's the problem. I do believe it's cowardice in a sense that, hey, I'm not doing my job. I'm worried about CCRB. I'm not going to put my hands on anyone because I don't want to get in trouble. That's also very self-serving. I do believe that is part of cowardice. But he doesn't appear afraid to me, because if he was afraid, he would have backed away from the incident even more and maybe postured up his body in a different manner and kind of crawled up more into a ball. But he's standing upright. He's standing erect. He's just walking in the middle of these potential adversaries here, these perpetrators. So that's why I think, and I'm starting to lean more towards him being nefarious, that he's well aware that he's not doing his job, that he took this job with the intentions of never being a police officer. I think that he's well aware. I don't see the fear on his face. Honestly, he doesn't appear to be afraid to me. He appears to refuse to do his job. Is it a form of cowardice because he's being a coward to do his job? Yes, but I believe that he's intentionally not doing his job. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. And that's what I mean by cowardice. I don't mean that he's a coward. I mean that he's not taking police action. And for whatever that reason is, I don't want the people on the street to tell me I'm not one of them. I don't agree with this law. Whatever the rationale in his brain is why he's not getting involved into this police situation. Doesn't matter if you're afraid or not. It's cowardice to act. It's cowardice to do the job that you swore an oath that you were going to do. You were going to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. You were going to enforce the laws of the state of New York and New York City. But you didn't do that. Like, he's actively not doing that. So whatever the reason is, whether he ultimately is scared or not, doesn't matter. it's an act of cowardice when we talk about doing your duty and a dereliction of duty. So I 100% agree with you. That's exactly what I was pointing at. Because you're right. I don't think he appears afraid. He doesn't appear afraid. I mean, in his gestures, he doesn't appear that someone that's afraid, and he doesn't appear someone that's engaged either.
And that's why I think that this cop should be terminated, right? I was evaluating this video. We got to see this video so many times. This video went viral. And initially on the onset, I said, wow, what a complete coward. But at the same token, I've watched other videos and I've seen the optics of other videos and cops involved. And I think I'm very good when it comes to reading behavior, as you are as well. We have a lot of experience. We can read behavior. We can read a room. And he does not appear to be afraid. It's almost like sometimes, John, you and I have both been on these types of incidents where you go to a domestic and the woman, in most cases, the overwhelming majority, sometimes the man has it, but the overwhelming majority of some of these domestic cases we would respond to where a woman would have an order of protection. Remember this, John? And she had absolutely no fear of her husband or boyfriend. She was actually the aggressor, but she weaponized that order of protection to use it to have this person, this husband or boyfriend, arrested at any time that she saw fit, that she didn't get her way. And that's what I see here with this cop, that he's not afraid, because at some point when you see the fight as the cop and the perpetrator are grappling and they start to shift, he shifts with them. Did you notice that, John? He starts to walk towards them. He shifts with them. So at no point do I see fear. I see refusal. And that's why I've seen cops who are afraid, right? We can expect that sometimes for rookies, there's a response, could be flight, fight, or freeze. They freeze up when they're new at it. But this cop didn't do that. He didn't fight. He didn't run away, and he didn't freeze up. He refused to do his job. He should be suspended and terminated.
All right, so I got something else here. Something we did a video on this yesterday. We put this out on the podcast yesterday. And what's today's date, Eric? Today's
the 7th, isn't it?
Today's the 8th. Today's Saturday, June 8th. So we did a podcast about this on June 7th. We were sent this video. So we did the podcast on June 7th. I actually just got the details from New York City Scoop. They just sent it to me. This occurs on June 3rd. So he's not modified by the New York City Police Department until this goes viral. Let me just read out what actually took place, and then let's get your thoughts on it. So there was a complaint report on file for assault on Monday, June 3rd, 2024 at approximately 207 hours, which is 2007 hours, which is 8 p.m. at night. For those of you, that's military time, in the vicinity of Randall Avenue and Rosedale Avenue, in the confines of the 4-3 precinct. An individual approached the officers and engaged in a verbal dispute, which escalated into a physical altercation. The incident caused a large crowd to form as a result, in which additional officers had to respond to address and to control the condition. The individual, so only one, was arrested. The following individual was arrested: Davis Jamel, 32-year-old. I'm not going to read out where he was, but his charges are injure officer on duty assault and unlawful assembly.
You know what? It's interesting, right? We did a podcast yesterday, and one of the questions you had said, John, if you remember, you said, were they all arrested? You said, well, yeah, we see they're arresting this one particular person of interest, but were they arresting everyone? Because everyone on that scene was subject to arrest, and everyone on that scene should have been arrested. So that answers that question. That was a great question that you asked, because I thought the same thing. And I'm curious down the line what also happens with the district attorney's office. Of course, that's a separate topic. But with that being said, based on the information that you just read, based on the date of the occurrence, there was no intentions of the NYPD of ever having a response in modifying or suspending or doing any kind of investigation with this cop. The only reason that this cop was modified or any change of status is because this video went viral and the NYPD leadership was caught with their pants down. This is a failure on the leadership, because what the leadership has now said is if this video did not go viral, that is a good cop. He did his job appropriately. He would be commended for it. He would continue to do his job. And just as those comments were said by some that this cop eventually may go to internal affairs and get a detective shield because he is now considered by some as a good cop.
So if this video never goes viral, we don't put it online, it doesn't go viral, we don't remix it, throw it out there, doesn't get hundreds of thousands of views. If that doesn't happen, he's actually the better cop. In the eyes of the NYPD, in the eyes of New York City, the tall officer who did not help his partner is the better cop. You know why? Because every time we put our hands on someone in the New York City Police Department, not we anymore because May and Eric are not there, but anytime a member of the New York City Police Department puts their hands on somebody for whatever reason, whether they were engaged and assaulted by someone who's completely irrational, like what happened here, doesn't matter. You have to place that you have to fill out a form, which is called a threat resistance injury report. You know who doesn't have to fill that out? The guy who never put his hands on them. There's not one allegation against him, but that other officer has to fill out a threat resistance injury report. And what happens with that? Allegations are created against him. Where do those allegations go? They go to the Internal Affairs Bureau. They go to the CCRB. He's self-reporting. And what's going to happen if 3 more times this week, or after that, or even in that same day, somebody runs up to him on New York City streets and brings him into a situation where he's into a physical altercation that he didn't start? Guess what? He's got to fill out 2 more threat resistance injury reports. And what is he now? He's a recidivist as far as the New York City Police Department is concerned. He's a threat resistance injury recidivist because he has 3 in only a week. Oh, let's look at this officer. Let's take a look. Why does he have so many? I don't know. Maybe because you hire people like the other guy. Maybe because your training has emboldened criminals on New York City streets and has emasculated the members of the New York City Police Department. And you're sending people out who had just received their training and they're afraid to act. That's why.
You know what this further proves, John? This further proves why the NYPD leadership has such a disdain for this podcast, not just because of our opinions and our critique, which does hurt their egos, which is egos over everything, but the other aspect to why the NYPD upper echelon has such a disdain for this podcast and its complete opposition, and basically put a gag order for the NYPD to not convene with you and I, and to not put out any information that you and I could comment on, is exactly this. Because if this video did not go viral and there was no gag order, the NYPD cops, because they have nowhere to seek to confide in, the union has left them behind. They're useless. The NYPD leadership has emboldened, enabled, and created this systemic problem that's going on in the NYPD that leaves a partner like that alone. So where would they seek out to? Where would the cops go for help? New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast. So that's why there's a gag order. That's why the NYPD upper echelon doesn't want them to speak to us. Because if this video didn't go viral, we would sure comment about this video, and it would go viral anyway because of our response and our indication that this is a dereliction and potentially refusal with intent. Because most of the cops right now that have this same ideology and characteristics and traits of this particular cop are coming on this job for the wrong reasons. They have no interest to help in public safety. They're self-serving. He's not going to put himself in a position that is going to self-initiate and self-create a threat resistance injury report that will lead to, as John said, CCRB potential civil liability, because there will be a substantiated complaint by the CCRB and potential civil liability, and he is unwilling to do that. He is unwilling to put himself in a position in harm's way, not just physically, financially, for the good people of New York City, for public safety. And if it did not go viral, on paper, he's considered a good cop. He doesn't have any complaints because he's not doing his job. So I hope people have a better understanding, because this cop that is doing his job, that is trying to help with public safety to bring this perpetrator to custody, is the one that will sustain the 58 record of a civilian complaint.
The record that stays on his record for eternity. In death, in retirement, this allegation, if this individual makes allegations, it carries the officer for eternity. Even life does not end. Even when his life ends, his 50A will carry on. At the same time, we're expunging criminal records. At the same time, we're saying you can't look at someone's criminal record to hire them. You can't look at someone's criminal record to see if you want them to rent from you. If you're a small landlord owner, you can't look at criminal records for anything. Oh, but if he's a cop, look, you are able to look at all of his records, even when they're as ridiculous as this officer was attacked. He was attacked, and he stood up for himself at this point. I think the other thing to highlight here is, what do you think ultimately? One thing, the guy in the red who interfered should have been arrested immediately. It's obstruction of governmental administration. He helped for OGA. He helped attempt to get the other male to evade the police officer. He literally stood in between while the other partner wasn't helping, and the cop had to push him off. So he interfered with that arrest. He made that arrest more dangerous. He emboldened the other people on the street to start to gather around. That individual in the red shorts should have 1,000% been arrested, if not the other guy as well. But he wasn't. But what do you think ultimately the DA is going to do? Do you think they're going to charge assault on an officer? Because I don't. I don't think that the DA draws up that case. And if they do, there is no way on God's green earth that they are prosecuting for assault on a police officer. It's only unlawful assembly. And why I'm highlighting this is because of when we heard John Schell talk about how people shouldn't be deported for stealing a bag of chips. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the bag of chips he's talking about, because he's not talking about people going and stealing a bag of chips. It stems all the way from the most egregious crimes all the way down. So if this individual is an illegal alien, first off, the NYPD is not even allowed to ask him. They can't even ask his immigration status. So how are they going to know to call ICE? They're not even going to know, right? But now he commits a felony, right? Assault on a police officer, but it doesn't get charged. So that's a bag of chips in John Schell's book. That's it. It's nothing but a bag of chips. So, Eric, do you think that ultimately he'll be charged? Am I off on what I'm saying?
You know what's funny? In almost 20 years of my career, I've never seen anyone get charged with unlawful assembly and it actually go through the process of the DA's office, except for one case. And this was a particular perpetrator that I had dealt with in housing in the South Bronx that had numerous cases against him for shootings. He's finally convicted, and he's doing 30 years to life right now. Finally. And this was the only particular case. I'm not going to give his name, but this was the only case. This perp was so egregious. This is a violent predicate felon. Other than that, anytime I've ever seen unlawful assembly drawn up as an arrest case, never make it past the DA's office within 6 months. It may make it past the DA's office for that day, but within 6 months, that case would be dismissed. Because plenty of times I did my research and I checked, and sure enough, those cases would be dismissed. Now, should every one of those persons of interest, those subjects on the scene, be arrested? Absolutely. Every one of them is impeding that arrest, impeding the scene. Every one of them is subject to obstructing governmental administration. Those cops that are causing the other cops to create a crowd to protect the other cops, they are not onlookers. They are impeding. They are diverting the cops' attention, creating a hazardous condition. Every one of them is subject and acting in concert for unlawful assembly and obstructing governmental administration. But you know where that case is going? Absolutely nowhere. And eventually, once those cases will be dismissed, every one of them will file civilian complaints, or maybe they'll be self-initiated, and those cops will be subject to civil liability. So I hope people that are not cops have a better understanding in how you could become the most complained cop when you do your job, because that cop refused to do his job. Again, I'm going to say it again, John. I don't see any fear on the demeanor and the body positioning. The body composition of that cop does not sense any fear. It sensed denial, refusal. And you know what? For that reason, I think that cop is evil, and he's far worse than most cops and someone that's afraid to do their job. Because if he is refusing to help his partner, what else is he capable of?
Cowards go first, baby. I didn't write it. It's in the Bible, Revelations. The cowardly, the non-believers, the rapists, the murderers, they shall have the second death in the lake of fire. Notice who goes first. The coward, right? But unlawful assembly, Eric, unlawful assembly is Class B misdemeanor. So if this person is a illegal alien, known gang member, illegal alien, part of the Tren de Aragua or MS-13 or any of these gangs, even if he's found guilty of an unlawful assembly, doesn't matter. He would not be deported. Even if that same holds true for OGA, he would not be reported. But assault on a police officer, I'll look up the exact charge of a felony. How many times have you seen assault on a police officer actually charged and followed through? And how many times in your career have you seen where it should have been charged at the arrest, but commanding officers in the NYPD did not want you to charge it because, oh, well, the cop wasn't seriously injured. He just got punched in his face or has a black eye or a couple of scrapes. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, absolutely. So the overwhelming majority of assault on an officer charges for an arrest were either downgraded by the district attorney's office or never even made it that far because of conversations with commanding officers that because did he really assault the cop? It's more like resisting. I mean, it's a failure on leadership, and it just shows how self-serving some of these commanding officers are because they're becking to their executives. They're trying to move up in their career, and they're afraid of getting felony numbers. Instead of standing up for the cops that were assaulted, they look to downgrade it. I've seen that as the overwhelming majority theme of the New York City Police Department. Now, I will say this. Dermot Shea is a former commissioner of the New York City Police Department. I did think that he gave away the store when it came to the police department. He even disbanded anti-crime. But to his credit, I will say he was the only police commissioner that would mention at CompStat that there needs to be a better job with the police department on seeking out investigations by the detective squads to ensure that assault on a police officer is actually charged appropriately and the evidence is presented to have the case go down the line. But I was also skeptical of why he was pushing that, because at the same time we were also anti doing stop and frisk, and he was pushing this narrative that was in complete opposition of intrusive police work.
Yeah, just Dermot Shea. I think I've heard Dermot Shea spoke. I think I told you this. He spoke in my BMOC. He said a lot of things that stuck with me my entire career, and I had several interactions with him. I heard him speak a bunch. I listened to a lot of the things he said. I think he was a very smart man. I do. I think he was one of the smartest executives we had in the New York City Police Department. But he was a complete, utter coward, and so none of it matters. We never saw what he was capable of. I think he basically, all his genius was for absolutely no good. But I agree with you. I think, and I agree what he was saying too. But again, I'd like to know, is assault on a police officer a bag of chips? Is it equivalent to a bag of chips? I need to know. If an illegal alien comes and assaults a New York City police officer in a situation like this, I don't know this person's immigration status. The police officers don't know their person's immigration because they're not allowed to ask, by the way, by law. But if it is determined that he is an illegal alien, is that one of the times that New York City Mayor Kaz Daughtry, John Schell, Tariq Shepard, is that one of those times that people should be deported, that ICE should be allowed to be contacted? Is this one of the serious violent felony convictions? Of course, we know he'll never get convicted with it going down the road. We have to wait for him to actually maim or kill a New York City police officer for that to be held up. But is that one of those times that we would? I need clarification on. I don't know. I say no. I say that is not one of the times they're talking about.
Oh, it's absolutely not. It would be ridiculous for anyone to actually believe that the New York City Police Department would consider assault on a police officer, other than being nearly killed or, and pretty much lifeless. It's not going to be taken as a serious crime. And I know the DA's office, they don't see it as a serious crime either. I mean, I remember this time. I'll never forget. Just want to show you the mental mindset of some of these district attorneys and what they thought about police officers. Now, clearly, they had no idea what is the capability of guns, or guns in the hands of a violent perpetrator, the wrong hands. So one time, we had this district attorney, I'll never forget, and it was a woman. I'm not going to give her name, but we were drawing up a case. We just arrested someone. We got a firearm, and it was one of those small little 380s that could pretty much fit in your pocket. And I'll never forget, we were sitting in the office and like we were all talking because it was a crazy situation how we got this firearm. We're all like, whew, that was close. And she was laughing on us. Oh, you guys are afraid of that little gun? She was making fun of us because she didn't realize the seriousness of that firearm. So do you think she's going to realize the seriousness of an assault on a police officer? They don't care. And the cops know it. Those district attorneys are not your friends. And for the public out there, if you're watching this and you're not a cop, the district attorneys, they're not your friends. They don't care about public safety. They don't care about the cops. They just care about their careers and their self-serving progressive politics. This is absolutely egregious. And I think, John, you brought up such a great point because I've been saying the same thing. They're cherry picking what crimes could get someone deported. But how do we get them deported if we can't ask their status? How do we actually determine their illegal status at some point? Who does that? Who investigates to figure out if this person was an illegal alien if we don't ask their status? So it's also quite interesting, right? We heard about the police department report that there's 80 some odd patterns. And who's at the forefront? Illegal aliens. So if we don't ask their status, how do they know that it's illegal aliens at the forefront of these patterns?
They have to wait for the news to report it. That's how they know. That's the only way they're going to know. So to me, when people sit there and tell me this administration supports cops, I'm like, you've been so gaslit. Your ability to intake information and remember more than even 48-hour period is gone. It's gone. Get off social media, put the phone down, start reading books, get out into nature, start thinking, and bring your senses back. Because like we just highlighted here on this podcast, this individual would still be walking around on the streets of New York. I'm talking about the police officer here. He would still be out with his partner the next day, if not for this going viral on social media. He didn't get modified till 4 days later, which means he went out on patrol if he was on. I don't know what his RDOs were, but I don't know what his regular days off were for people that are. I don't know what days he had off, but if he was scheduled to work in the days after, he went out and he stood with a partner on New York City streets. That's a danger to the New York City police officer. It's a danger to the public. And you would have never known about it if not for that video. And you would never know what they're talking about. You would say, oh, they just don't, if you stole a bag of chips, that's, of course, why would we be deporting people for stealing a bag of chips? But a bag of chips encompasses a whole lot of things like robbing women's chains off their neck, stripping them of purses, assaulting a police officer. It's a pretty large bag of chips that John Shell keeps referring to. So this administration absolutely does not support you. This administration only steps up and wants to sound like a conservative law and order administration, a Rudy Giuliani era administration, might I add. That's what they want to sound like, but only when they get exposed for the progressives that they are and the failure of their own policies and rules and regulations and all of the things they're calling for. It's the only time. And Eric, I want to commend you because you're 100% right. You are 100% right. We get so much flack. We've been attacked by the unions. We've been attacked by the upper echelon of the NYPD. They've sent their criminal associates friends after us to threaten us, to try to get us to stop giving our opinions and go online. But yesterday, you came on here and you said that the NYPD, if you were the commissioner, you would get them involved in training. So even though the Sergeants Benevolent Association, who I was a member of for the majority of my career, almost a decade, as a sergeant, they don't block me on social media, but apparently they've been listening to this podcast. So Eric, I want to commend you. I want you to take a look at this screen and I want you to see the change, another thing that's changed in the New York City Police Department because of people like you and people like me, and specifically this podcast. Take a look right now, my friend. Oh, did it go? There it goes. You see it? Look what came out yesterday after we did the podcast.
Dude, that is outstanding. First of all, I was so excited to see that, but absolutely, I think it's because of the podcast. A couple of people had texted me and DM me on Instagram and said, listen, this is because of you guys. This is huge. This is what the police department needs. Not only First of all, this is a smart move. Not only are they going to get a seminar and some training, it's for some people will pique their interest to get involved in martial arts, but they've also made it fun. You get to meet a celebrity, a fantastic athlete, and Glover Teixeira resides in Connecticut. He teaches in Connecticut. It's close enough to New York if anybody wants to go there to his place and get some training. I mean, this guy was the oldest champion in the UFC. He's a fantastic jiu-jitsu artist, a fantastic striker, just a good man. A lot of the fighters right now are under his behest, under his helm. This is because of this podcast. Absolutely make no mistake about it. So for that, you know what? If it helps the cops, I'm proud to say it. This is the help that you need. He's going to show you some stuff, but you can't just apply it one time. You have to continue it. And by God, this is what the cops need. They need to protect themselves.
Yeah, so for those of you that are on audio, the Sergeants Benevolent Association, they put out on Saturday, June 22nd, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., UFC legend Glover Teixeira grappling seminar. They have 49 spots available. At the New York City Police Academy. If you RSVP, you'll get an MMA shirt, a rash guard, and workout shorts. Great. I love it. 100% in response to I asked you if you were the police commissioner, what you would do, and you said you would get these guys access to training. You would seek to get them discounts to help in training on their own time, and that the majority has to happen. My only knock on this, there's only 49 spots available. It's going to go to all the wrong people. I'm sure Kaz Daughtry will be there in his MMA shorts. That'll say assistant, whatever the hell he is now, deputy commissioner operations. He'll have his own rash guards made up, even though at New York City payer's expense, at New York City taxpayer's dime, he'll have rash guards made up. Chief of Patrol John Shell have rash guards made up. The Edward Caban will have rash guards made up. They'll have their insignias all over it, even though they've never done jiu-jitsu one time in their life. But they'll be there at the forefront, taking pictures, going on social media, and the average cop, rank and file on the street, is not going to get access to this. Again, there's only 49 spots available, and there's probably really only one, if none. There's probably really no spots available. So I appreciate the SBA for gaslighting your members again. Great job. I appreciate you, Eric, for calling people out and giving them the response. That's what we're saying. We're out here. We're giving free consulting people, not only to the New York City Police Department, but to your unions. Unfortunately, they don't know how to give real solutions. They only gaslight. To me, this is a further gaslit because, Eric, you train UFC. You train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu every day of your life. How can you possibly use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And I'm not knocking it. I think that you should use it. But most of the techniques that you use, if you use them on New York City streets, you have violated the diaphragm law and you will be arrested. Am I wrong for saying that?
You're 1,000% right. And I want to just go back and reflect on what John said about the gaslighting. He's 100% right. I'm super excited to see that someone actually, is that they're actually listening to this podcast and we are helping. I see this as a chance for people to pique their interest. But is this an actual response to getting the cops trained? Absolutely not. It goes back to what I used to say. Training in the police department is like a secret squirrel society. Sometimes you will find out, right? It really is. You would find out about. I remember there was interrogation training, which I thought was awesome for my cops. And it was the hardest thing I had to write 49. I basically had to beg for it, right? And they would be like, but there's only 3 spots. So-and-so's getting it. I'm like, what? I remember, first of all, let's talk about the most basic plainclothes training, right? I remember there were no slots left in plainclothes because some admin person got it or some person that was sitting upstairs who's never going to go out in the street. Like, they just took up the 2 spots in plainclothes. I go, what? I got 2 guys in my unit that have just gotten to my unit, and they're doing anti-crime, and I have to wait another month. And it would look so goofy because I have 2 guys running around in uniform with the rest of the team plainclothes because they couldn't get them training. But there was admin spots that were filled. You're 100% right. I was super excited when I saw that grappling poster yesterday. I'm like, that's great. But you're 100% right. I took note of that also. Wow, 49 spots. That's it. Listen, if that's enough just to pique their interest and to start, is this going to be a systematic thing where we constantly bring people in to do seminars? That would be fantastic. I remember I was part of the jiu-jitsu team for the NYPD, and we had Henzo Gracie come and do a seminar, and we had what was it? Excuse me, it was Igor Gracie, and we had Hollis Gracie and Igor Gregor. Gregor was another brother, and they came and they did a seminar, and it was really nice. But it was all the guys that were already into jujitsu, and it was more like sport based, and it was great. It was awesome, but it wasn't really based for police work. It was more, it was more of like the athletic part to it, like a fraternal type organization thing, which I thought was so cool. But the police department has the capability, it has the funding where they can actually have Glover Teixeira teach cops and have people constantly come in, and it doesn't have to be a superstar. I know they brought Glover Teixeira because it's sexy, he's a superstar, he's a celebrity. It could just be a local school. It doesn't have to be that. But I agree with you. Jiu-jitsu is awesome. Would I want to roll around with someone in the street with my firearm doing jiu-jitsu? Absolutely not. Also, I would be violating the law. To hold someone down, I would have to compress their diaphragm or their back. I would 100% violate the law. But I do think it's important to know jiu-jitsu so that you don't go to the ground and you respect it and understand it. And it does teach you the ability to get up so that you stay on your feet, which is reflective of, if you watch UFC fights, most of the fights right now become stand-up striking matches because the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling cancels out and it keeps them on their feet.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, but it just shows what could be done, right? It just shows what could be done. So, not knocking on anyone that trains. I agree with you. I think everybody should train. I think everybody should partake in some type of physical exercise, whatever that is for you: running, biking, weightlifting, yoga, all of the above. I think, honestly, I think it's good. We just had NYPD Cops and Kids. They partnered with Tunnel the Towers last night. They had an event at Madison Square Garden. I wasn't able to make it. I actually spoke to Pat Russo. He asked me if I could box in it. I wasn't able to make it. I already have plans for yesterday, last night, and this weekend coming. So I was completely unable to go there. However, I listened to Pat on WABC Cop Talk Radio, and he said that Dana White called the chief of department's office and said, "Hey, do you guys need anything? Is there anything I could help you guys with? I heard that there's a Cops and Kids boxing program. I want to get in contact with them." So the chief of department's office puts Dana White in touch with Pat Russo and Dave Sieve. Two great guys, great organization, right? Really transcends cops and community and all the political nonsense. I think it brings everybody together, right? Something I think we could all say is a good thing. And, Dana White gave them a ton of equipment and a ton of things they needed, $250,000 in equipment. But why can't that same chief of department's office, why can't they reach back out to Dana White now and say, "Hey, thank you for everything. We have this diaphragm law in New York City. Can you help us come up with a training? Can you help us come up with a training on how we could implement this effectively?" And if they can't, can you please just make videos and help us to show our elected leaders that this law needs to be repealed? Why can't they do that, Eric? They put out this video years ago. I think Henner Gracie made a video on it, and he showed how it's ineffective. Why can't we use those same things to push back to stop scenarios like this from happening on New York City streets? Because you see it all the time. You see cops, they don't want to put their hands on people. It's like they have salad tongs and they're afraid to touch people. "Oh, let me just get my salad tongs out and I'll touch you." That's what you see. You don't see people who are willing to engage. And am I off here, Eric? What do you think?
No, I'm laughing because I used to say things I used to tell the cops too, dude, what is this? That's how you grab people? Stop. Come on. No, you're absolutely right. Henner Gracie did a video just basically the reason why that Dana White or Henner Gracie can't provide any training that will circumvent the diaphragm law, because it's virtually impossible. It's virtually impossible to wrestle, grapple with someone, hold them down without compressing their diaphragm. That's the meat and potatoes of someone's body that you actually put them in a position to maintain control and custody of someone. What Henner Gracie said back then is absolutely dead on. He was spot on. Is that if you don't remove this diaphragm law, you've now forced cops, if they are in a volatile situation where they use force, that they're forced to use blunt trauma. And that's the part that the politicians don't understand. So what is this? This is another epic fail by the leadership of the NYPD, because there is, and I say this all the time, when you're in a leadership position, not only do you manage the people below you, you have to manage people above you. And how do you manage the people above you? By standing up to them. The NYPD leadership was supposed to stand up to the politicians, stand up to the mayor, stand up to New York City Council, say, listen, this is impossible for us to do our job. And this is what we have now. This is the byproduct. This cop that is refusing to do his job because he's scared of getting in trouble. He's not scared of the people there. He was not scared. He's scared of doing his job, and he doesn't want to do his job because of your policies. And that's why I think that cop should be terminated. I think that cop is downright evil. Honestly, the fact that he let another man, his partner, fight and he refused to help him, I'm going to say it here, he's a piece of garbage. What else is he capable of? I'm serious. What else is that guy capable of? If he can watch you grapple and fight with someone and not help you, I think his case is far worse than the incident on the subway with the lieutenant. What do you think about that?
I think it's the same. Like, to me, I think it's the same. The only difference between the lieutenant is the lieutenant got injured, but this cop could have easily got injured. Could have easily turned the other way. I mean, the reaction was the same. So how do you differentiate it? How do you say, oh, that guy not helping, he needs to get suspended, and this guy not helping, he needs to get modified? I think it's the same thing. I just think the outcomes were different. Thankfully, the lieutenant and that officer are okay. Thankfully, the lieutenant only got beat up and he got some scrapes and bruises. Thankfully, this cop just got minor injuries. Thank God they're not maimed or dead, right? So I think they're just as egregious, bro. I really do. I think it's just as terrible. And just to go back, because I forgot, I went on a rant and I'm sorry, but plainclothes training. I was in anti-crime for 2 years before I got plainclothes training. And the only reason I got it is because there was a cop on Staten Island at the time who shot somebody and he was in plainclothes. And they're like, this guy doesn't have plainclothes training. And then they realized that most of the people that actually did anti-crime didn't have plainclothes training. So then they were like, all right, we got to get everybody in there. So then they gave us plainclothes training. And it was one of the better trainings that I attended. It was honestly just a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu day, and they just beat the shit out of us. But it was good, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought there needed to be more stuff like that. But I don't think that they have that training anymore.
You know, I just want to tell the public also, the cops that watch this, it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu. Not everybody likes jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I love boxing. I boxed. I did jiu-jitsu. I love all forms of martial arts. I always like to, just to peek in. And I started reading about Kali, which is knife fighting in Philippines. I'm very interested in. But you don't have to do jiu-jitsu. If that's something you don't like, if you like judo, if you like boxing, and if you're not into that, well, then do CrossFit. Or do weightlifting, do something that maximizes your body's capability. You have to do some form of training. You have to stay in shape. I do prefer you do some form of martial arts because I do think it builds that mindset. And also it desensitizes you to get used to, it's uncomfortable. Cops don't realize we're very fortunate that you're out there doing your job, and you may go an entire year without someone putting their hands on you, especially if you happen to be a big cop, if you have if you're an opposing figure. But if someone puts their hands on you and you never train, that may put you into a shock. But if you're training, then your neural pathways will just kick in and you will be comfortable and your body will just find that. So, but ultimately, we have to be prepared. We have to be physically and mentally prepared. But I do think, I want to go back to that, John, with this cop. We now have a new standard. The standard is cherry pick. One incident, someone gets modified. One incident, someone gets suspended. But I really mean that. I don't see that this cop is afraid, but I really question what this cop was capable of. And what really bothers me, I'm perturbed by, is to think that during this arrest, in order for this arrest to go through the process, the supervisors had to watch this video. The body camera footage. The supervisors watched the body camera footage. The DA's office watched the body cam footage. Possibly, maybe the integrity control officer at that precinct. And unless that video went viral, it would have never been reported. No one had the guts to say this is a dereliction of duty.
I'm with you, man. I'm totally with you because it's again, it's all gaslighting. Even the modification is a gaslighting. It completely contradicts the response they had in November when they suspended the other guy. Again, we always say it: if discipline isn't equal, it's discriminatory, right? If you're in the same scenario, I said it here. I believe it's because this officer's black. He might even there might either be other boxes that he checks that is the reason why they didn't suspend him and they modified him. And I think there is a big discriminatory thing in the NYPD when it comes to discipline. Discipline is not equal in the NYPD, and that disciplinary matrix only heightened it. It didn't get away with it. It heightened it. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you, dude. I think this is completely egregious. And again, the modification is it's a gaslighting. It's a form of gaslighting because it would have never happened if not for this video going viral. And it just shows how much they really care about you as New York City police officers. And it shows how much they care about you as the public, right? Because you want this, you call 911, this guy shows up, I'm never calling 911 again. Your wife calls 911, you want this guy showing up? Your mother, your disabled cousin or brother, you want this guy showing up to handle the situation? I mean, and how do you even get involved? How do you even get involved in the minutia of anything when you physically cannot control anything? You're physically not confident, right? Because if you're not confident in that, there's no way you could be confident in your communication. If you cannot be confident standing in front of another human being, there's no way that you could be confident in communication, and you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to basically effectively communicate or to de-escalate a situation. Your verbal judo skills, as we like to call it, will never come into play because you're weak, timid, and docile.
I'd also like to say this, and this is why I used to tell my cops, okay? So there was an argument and a debate and eventually a lawsuit that settled. And this is kind of reflective of what Edwin Raymond says. So we talk about quotas and we talk about summonses, we talk about arrest. And that we cannot look at a cop's profile to determine if they're a good cop based solely on their arrest record. Is an arrest record important? Yes. But that's why sometimes I understand what Edwin Raymond's saying, right? When he talks about quotas and reflecting someone's record of who is a good cop. So let's just talk about this incident. I don't know who was the arresting officer for this case, but if the tall cop was the arresting officer, and if every arrest he's involved in is in the same manner and he ends up having 300 arrests, is he a good cop? Did he actually make those arrests? That's a great question.
Way to pat yourself on the back. It is a great question, though. It is. You're 100% right. No, he's not a good cop. 100%. I don't care how many arrests he has. You know, if he's a guy who drove a chief and then everyone brought the collars to the command and he processed them and he has 300 collars and then he makes deputy commissioner operation, is he a great cop? I don't think so. Eric, unmute yourself before you pat yourself on the back again. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I was still there. I had to pat myself on the back for that one. But do you know? I really was. That's a great question. Do you know someone like that? Do you know someone that fits that? Can you think of someone that comes to mind?
Yeah. His name's Kaz Daughtry.
I mean, honestly, let's be serious now. If you're in this situation, John, and you see your partner act in this manner, how are you going to feel? What are you going to say to him? What would there be a conversation? What would be a response?
You know, I have a tendency to yell and scream and curse in these situations, just how I happen. So I could tell you right now how I would be acting. I would be yelling at him to give me his effing hands. I would be yelling at the people to get the F back. I would be yelling at my partner, what the F are you doing? Get over here and help me handcuff him. I could tell you that right now. I could tell you I would have numerous allegations against myself for FADO, for verbal abuse or whatever the hell you want to call it, offensive language. There you go. For offensive language. Because it's honestly at that point, I would be more mad at him than I would at the individual that I was fighting with. If we were on the street and just walking down the block and I was with one of my friends and we just happened to get jumped and my friend does nothing to help me, I'm going to punch him in his face right after we leave. That's just honestly, like you did absolutely nothing. I did nothing wrong. And you sided with them basically. If it's out of sheer fear, whatever, but you bring up a very valid point, Eric. I don't think he's scared either. And at one point while he's wrestling with them, when you see this video, he's wrestling with this individual. He kind of gets away from everybody because they were trying to hold him back and let the other guy get away. And then he breaks through and he gets them by himself. And now when he's looking up, he's looking to make sure the other two aren't coming. He sees a third person walking towards him nonchalantly, what happens to be his partner. You see it right here, clear as day. 3 males are coming at you while you're trying to fight. None of them are helping you.
I hate seeing videos like this because I had a couple of guys that used to work in different precincts that I was in, and they had a body just like this guy. I mean, look at him. He's tall. He's lean. He looks like he's in shape. This is a waste of a body right here. I would see some of these cops. They would be in the gym all day. They were big. I mean, they had some real size to them. I knew some guys were like 6'4", and they were just like this guy, useless, like a waste of a body. I would tell them, like, if I had your body, you know what I could do with that? With the drive that I have, the determination, the amount of training. If I had your body, what I could do with it, and that's what's a shame about it. It just shows you that it's not the size of the dog, it's the dog that's inside you. Because this guy, he's more of a coward than the one that was on the train with the lieutenant. Because based on that, it appeared to me that guy was scared. Now I get it. It was a volatile situation. The lieutenant got beat up. Maybe he froze. He got scared. I don't excuse it. But this here, I think this cop is evil because he's not scared. He just doesn't care. And that's what makes it worse. He is a huge liability. Anyone that goes out there and has to work with this guy, I would say, you know what? We're not doing anything today. Today is a day off. You're working with this guy? Where is the union to say, we will not accept his union dues? This is not a police officer. That's what the union should do. If I was a union president, I would say, I will not accept his union dues. I'm not representing him because he hurts every one of your cops. And wait till the sergeant does his evaluation. Oh, community interaction. I'm sure, great. His community interaction is going to be the best scores. Physical fitness, great. He's going to probably have a 4.5 evaluation. I can see it now.
Yeah, I know. He's great. That's what I'm saying. He's going to, on paper, he's going to look 100% better. And you're 100% right. If he takes the collar, he'll even look better than that. Because guess what? That's a collar without a complaint. The complaint will go against the cop who was actually involved in making the arrest, right? And probably the other two who came over and saved him, and and who restored order on New York City streets that day, right? And that's what they had to do. They put themselves into the fray. It's honestly it's just a highlight and failure in public safety for New York City. All of this, all the things we're talking about, the minutia of what's going on inside of public safety, inside of the NYPD. And honestly, it's all gaslighting. And you could go back. I mean, you could run this tape. We're going over an hour now, and I don't think you're going to find one person that's going to debate us. We've done hundreds of hours of videos like this, breaking down incidents. And while we get attacked a lot, I haven't heard one person to say they want to come on here and debate the things we're saying or to point out where we've been wrong. And, we'll put that offer out again. We know you're watching this show, obviously. So anybody that feels that we're the ones gaslighting the public, we're the ones spreading misinformation, feel free, come on here. We don't talk over anybody. We're more than happy to give you or share this platform with you and have you come on and expound on your thoughts and tell us where we're wrong, where we're right, whatever you want to say, and that's it. Anything before we go? And I just want to end on one thing when we go.
Shout out to Cops and Kids. Shout out to Dave Sieve and shout out to Pat Russo for the work that they do with the community. And I think it's fantastic what they do by putting some of these cops in the ring and having an experience boxing. I think it was Ernest Hemingway. I think it was Ernest Hemingway, I'm pretty sure, who said there's no more honest conversation than two men actually in a boxing ring. So what you're doing for the police officers, building their confidence, I think it's a huge confidence builder. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. If you step in the ring, it takes a lot of guts and it takes pride, and you learn a lot about yourself. And what you find out is when you do martial arts is that the person that you thought was unbeatable is beatable. And the things that you thought you were not capable of, you're capable of. And your body can do, and your mind and body can do amazing things. So hats off for anybody that participated, and honestly, Pat Russo and Dave C, for what you do for the cops in the community. My hat's off to you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And they build up the kids too. And they had numerous kids that have went through that program that have went on to excel, not only in boxing, but in life, and are actually members of the New York City Police Department today. So, they're creating a vital service. They're doing it from their heart, because they ain't making money for it. I'll tell you that right now. They're doing it from their heart. They're doing it because they care. So 100% shout out to them. I just want to end on former NYPD Sergeant Stephen Lee. He was a whistleblower. He reported on corruption in the NYPD. He was arrested for an off-duty incident. He was charged with assault 3 and sentenced to 6 months in jail. The report came out. He was housed next to the killer of Jonathan Diller. He was immediately removed from Rikers, and now he's in Westchester County Jail. So he's in jail there. His jail ID is 0000281884. I'll put all this information on the bottom of this podcast. Anyone wants to donate any money to his commissary, it's touchpay.com. You go in there. Again, it's Stephen Lee. You use his jail ID. Also, if you just want to send him a hot meal, it's icaregifts.com. Again, you use his name and his jail ID. And if anyone wants to set up a teleconference with him, you use the Securus app. He called me yesterday. He wanted to know if he's getting any support out there. He called me from prison. And I basically said, a lot of people are on the fence with wanting to support you. I hear a lot of cops calling him a rat. And that to me bothers me, because that means that you support cops selling drugs. That means you support cops being involved in prostitution. You support cops shaking down businesses. To me, that's not a rat. To me, that's a police officer. That's what we're supposed to do. So I have no qualms with him reporting corruption whatsoever. But I think the fact that he's in jail for 6 months for a misdemeanor assault that nobody was injured on just shows that there's a clear target on him because he is a cop. Like we've said in the past, I'm a retired cop. Eric's a retired cop. He's a retired cop. Sal Greco's a retired cop. All of you for the rest of your life will hold the stigma of former NYPD. If you get arrested, if you run for office, if you start another career, that is never leaving you. So if he's getting 6 months for a minor assault, what are you going to get for defending your family member and you're involved in a shooting? What are you going to get for involving someone if someone physically assaults you and you injure them? These things are egregious. I think we should stick together. I think these transcend how we feel about each other.
Support in life, not support in death. That's the message right here. Of course, you want to support death. You want to support family members, survivors. But how do you support actual cops on the job and cops in retirement? Is by actually showing them that you care in life, not just by words, but actually show them that despite what you think about Stephen Lee or whatever you heard about the case, these are just rumors. Call him yourself, ask him questions, show him some support. A conversation is enough. Thank you.
So I ended up real quick, wrap it up. Cop gets modified. He gets his gun and his shield taken. I'm saying gaslighting. I'm saying absolutely nothing happens. And down the road, he probably gets rewarded. What do you say, Eric?
I'm with the comments. 18 months, Detective Shield, IAB, possibly grade, moving up. If this never went viral, he is a good cop on paper. He's not getting any complaints. I'm sure he'll have a great arrest record too. There will be absolutely no response. He will continue to be a New York City police officer.
Pretend to get stuff done.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.